Hello world, my name is Tim Roswick, and today I want to talk about accessibility, something that I have recently learned about and really come to understand, and I want to tell you what it is and how you can use it to improve the experience that people have with your game. Now, before we start, I just want to say that for a long time, I thought accessibility was making my game easier. And if you know, I made a game called Philophobia, the Fear of Love, and it was a game about suicide and death and loss of love and all kinds of like dark, deep emotional feelings. And the game was based on the 5 stages of grief. And I wanted to walk you through some of these like really negative experiences. And part of that, like especially in the anger section, because it's, you know, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, the stages of grief and all that. I specifically did shit in the game to fuck you over, to make you angry, because that was part of the experience. And I remember there were several times during development where people were just getting extremely frustrated. And I was like, that's what I want. It's too hard. Good. That's what, good. It's, you know, this is a negative experience. This is a horrible thing. This dude is in hell fighting these like literal anger demons. I want you to feel that way. That's good. But it didn't really hit me until we got into testing. And I'll never forget this. I remember that one of the first people that ever tested my game, I sent them a level. I sent them the game. And these levels are one screen levels. They're on single screen, and they're designed to take anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. And 2 to 5 minutes is with the 10, 20 deaths I expect you to take, because you die and then you instantly restart and you try the level again. So the actual levels can take 10, 15 seconds if you know what you're doing. Speedrunners are insane at this. But I watched him play the same level for 45 minutes. 45 minutes. And I have never cringed so hard in my entire life. Because as a designer, I was like, okay, this person, they are playing this over and over. They're trying to give me feedback as a developer, but they're not having fun. And if this was a real person in the real world, well, obviously they're a real person, but if they were in the real world, they didn't have any kind of desire to test for me and provide feedback, and they didn't know who I was and they just bought my game, there's no way they would have stuck out that level for 45 minutes. That was insane. And I realized at that point that, like, okay, something is wrong here. And so that began my journey of accessibility. Now, that wasn't the whole lesson, because I didn't really learn my lesson there. I still had wanted to deliver this experience, right? And so later on in development, I experienced similar things. Like, okay, if the player starts the game and they're 5 minutes into it, and I don't introduce controls properly, I don't make them learn something first before I say, okay, here's an enemy. How are they supposed to know that's an enemy, right? So there are a lot of visual tricks that you can use to tell somebody it's an enemy. And why is that important? Well, if somebody doesn't understand why they're failing, it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause major issues. There's a lot of times in games where I see this a lot in Feedback Friday, because I play a lot of games that are not refined, and they're not like their earlier prototypes. So if I play a game and like I die and I don't know why I die, it's very frustrating and makes me not want to play the game again. Those are things you have to learn as a designer, like to tell people what kills you and how it kills you, or what's bad and how it's bad. And so there's a process to it. There's an introductory process, and I have videos on the channel that talk about the invisible tutorial and that kind of thing. And so I started to refine my process in Philophobia through kind of game design. So if you played the final game, you know that there's like an intro sequence. There's like a series of things where, like, for example, I never actually use text to tell you controls. I do in some of the levels, because I couldn't figure out how to relay it. But the first 10 minutes, for example, there's a point where you come that you can't pass unless you jump. And most people are like, okay, they're going to jump. They're playing on a keyboard, they'll press space. They're playing on a controller, they'll press A. And so they get that they're supposed to jump, because they can't progress until they jump. So they learn that basic movement, right? But But that ran into an initial problem too. So a lot of these realizations happened after I shipped the game and after I watched a series of things on Twitch, and I'm going to share that with you. So if you're thinking, okay, accessibility is one of those things you don't need to worry about, you want to make a hard game, if people can't get good and beat your game, they don't need to worry about it. Like, you're the designer, you need to make the game that you want to make, and it's not about them. I want you to consider this, because this is something that, like, oh my God, I've never felt this feeling before in my life. There was a series of people that bought my game, that paid money for my game, and they attempted to play through it, and they could not play through it because of the way the game was set up, because of a range of reasons, and I'll get into the reasons in a minute, but having someone tell you that they paid for your game and that they can't get through it, and they've tried, and they really want to, that hurts, man. That hurts, because for me, I designed this game as a representation of emotions and kind of I wanted to be something that would kind of help you through grief. And I don't know if I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a PhD, I don't know if I was even on the right track, but that was my intention. And I realized with that intention, I needed to make the game completable. But the very game's design prevents a certain subset of the population from beating it. It literally prevents them. And games are the only medium on the planet that can do this, right? A movie doesn't stop in the middle of it if you're not paying attention. YouTube videos do, but that's a whole other subject. A podcast doesn't stop. Music doesn't stop. They are passive. They continue on without you, whether you're paying attention or not. Games, if you don't get good and you don't have the skill required, you don't get the experience you paid for. They will stop you from progressing. And that's really important, because depending on the goal of your game, right? If your game is to deliver an experience and you want somebody to deliver and experience your thing, you could be making mistakes, and we're going to go through a series of them, a series of things that you can do to improve the amount of people that go through your experience. But you could be literally stopping people from experiencing your game. And this problem tends to get worse with people that have disabilities in various forms. And a lot of people don't ever put thought into the experience alone, just the accessibility of the experience to the majority of the population, let alone the people that have some sort of disability. And they want to experience your game too, and they can't for whatever reason. So, oh man, that when I would, and I saw this on Twitch a series of times too. There were a series of people that played my game on Twitch. Hundreds of deaths, just unable to complete certain points. And I was just, as a designer, that was not what I wanted. I thought I wanted to make a challenging and difficult game, but that's not really what I want. I wanted to deliver challenge, but I wanted to deliver it in a way that would not prevent you from, okay, my camera. Okay. We're rolling with it. My camera likes to do that. I wanted to build it in a way that wouldn't prevent you from experiencing the story. So in the director's cut, this is one of the ways that I'm going to tackle the difficulty versus accessibility problem, is the general experience is getting slightly easier. So by the way, the director's cut thing, Philophobia is coming to Steam early next year, and it's going to have a bunch of additional content. It's going to have some changes to it. It's going to have some things that it's going to be a proper Steam release. I never got to do a Steam release because we did the whole itch thing, and that was a cool experiment, but like I should have had the Steam release. But the game is coming out like it's coming out for the first time, but it's got a series of changes to it because I think it's important. And one of those changes is going to be the ability to unlock a harder section of the game with the optionable collectibles. And this was something that was supposed to be in the game, but I just got cut for time. And I want to make the base experience somewhat easier. Now, there's a lot of games that do this in really interesting ways. Celeste is a perfect example, and I think Celeste is a great example. Celeste has something called an assist mode. It allows you to tweak the settings and even turn invincibility on or things like that, specifically to allow you to get through the experience without, having the game stop you from doing it. And I was really against stuff like that for a long time because, like I said, I wanted to deliver that emotional experience, and I wanted to really like share my creation with people. And if they weren't good enough, I wanted them to try and get better. But what I realized is that there are a lot of people in the world, and not everybody thinks like I do, right? When I'm not good enough, my default is to work harder and try and be better. Not everybody's like that, and especially people in negative states of mind. And guess who this game resonates with? Fathophobia specifically. People that have been through breakups, people that are going through grief, people that have lost somebody important to them, people that are in really fucked up negative states of mind. They resonate with this dark story and these emotional feelings. And for me to not allow them to access the experience that they paid for, it gave me a sense of responsibility, I think, and it made me realize that, okay, I want to make the game that I want to make, but I want to let players play the way that they want to play. Right. And to do that, it's going to take some extra work, but it's worth it to me because, again, games are not like movies or music or these other art forms. Games are interactive. And anytime a human interacts with a thing, they're going to come at it from a different perspective, right? They do that with movies and stuff too. Your friend can watch a movie and say it's trash, and you can watch a movie and think it's the best thing ever. I have so many movies that I just think are amazing, and like other people just think they're garbage. And you can see this all the time with critic versus user reviews and Rotten Tomatoes and all kinds of stuff. Even without interaction, you get this polarization. Some people like different things, and that's okay. But with interaction, there's another layer to it, because now it's not only experience, it's you doing the thing, and different people will do different things given the same scenario. So making a game accessible allows more people to access the thing, which you never know, the subpopulation of people that you allow access to with accessibility might be the ones that fucking love your game, right? The people that are willing to put up with your bullshit controls and your text prompts that go way too fast and all that shit, they may not be the people that end up loving it. You ever think of that? Like maybe the people that will absolutely love your game and give it 5 out of 5 stars and 100% rating and all the shit, maybe they're the people that can't play it because they can't read as fast as your text goes, or you didn't allow remappable controls and they're in some other country where their keyboard doesn't fucking work the same as you. WASD is a weird configuration for them, right? Like, what if? And that's the problem. That's the problem is games with accessibility, I think, is super important because, like I said, you should design the game that you want to make, but you should let the player play the way that they want to play. Because that's how people fall in love with products, with interactive experiences. They do the thing that they want to do, but they enjoy the experience that you made. So I've got a couple ways here of how you can kind of improve the accessibility of your game from purely basic. And this video can't even cover the tip of the iceberg of everything that you can do to make your game more accessible. But I got a list of some of the more basic, minimal dev time type of stuff that you can do straight out of the gate to just make sure that your game is accessible to more people. So the first one is supporting multiple input devices. Okay, some people work better with controllers, some people work better with keyboards, some people like to use their mouse, some people can only use their mouse. I forget who said it, but I got really into Darkest Dungeon, and I was reading the Reddit for Darkest Dungeon, and I asked specifically, in the subreddit, I said, what makes this game so great? Like, why do you guys like it? Because this is that game I put more hours into than most games that I do these days, because I don't have a lot of time, but that game just hooked me in, and I didn't really know why, but I asked why, and one of the person responded, I like Darkest Dungeon because I can sit with my baby on my lap in my left hand and use the mouse with my right hand, and I can play the whole game with the mouse. And I was like, what? Wait, nothing to do with the game, nothing to do with the art style, the voiceovers, nothing to do with the progression system. This guy likes the game because he can just use the mouse for the whole game. Like, that's what he likes about the game. And so supporting that kind of behavior, supporting that ability is important, because you never know. There might be a person who has some sort of disability, or maybe they're missing a limb or something like that, and they can't use a controller properly, right? So they might want to only use a mouse. They might have a weird keyboard layout or whatever. They might not have a keyboard. There are people without keyboards. And especially if you're going to require a controller or something like that, there are going to be people that, if it's a PC game, they're going to be people that buy your game and they don't have a controller. What are they going to do? The second one is Remappable Controls, for the same reason. I'll never remember when I talked to Blackthorn Prod, and it's actually in the interview. It happens live on the interview for YouTube. I said something like, oh, people should really like adopt normal controls like WASD. And he was like, well, my keyboard doesn't... WASD is a really weird control scheme for me because my keyboard is different. And I was like, oh, well, shit. What a narrow-minded thing to say. Like, I think that things should just like work the way that I do, but there are thousands of things that don't work the way that I do with the things that I have in the place that I live, right? And so Remappable Controls is really important, because that is one of those things that's like 10% of the effort for 90% of the result. You can provide a bunch of control schemes, you can provide a bunch of all kinds of stuff, but Remappable Controls is generally not that hard to implement. It does take some time, some dev time to implement, but the result makes it work everywhere for all the stuff, right? If anybody can set any key to anything in the settings menu, they can play exactly the way that they want to play. If they want to set up their entire keyboard to where they can play with one-handed because they got a baby on their knee, right? One-handed, they can. They don't gotta. If they got their keys in a weird spot to you, weird doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means it's different from yours. They can, and that's the easiest way to kind of do that whole thing. Multiple control schemes don't really work unless you have absolute knowledge of all the keyboard layouts and all the different things and all the different accessibility options and disability issues that people run into. So Remappable Controls is the easiest, fastest way to do that. The UI, this is an important one. You want to make sure that your UI can be accessible from all of the input methods that you use, and it blows my mind. Like Steam has an entire category for partial controller support, because fucking developers, myself included, are fucking lazy. Okay, I'm not just accusing you, I'm saying me too. Where you make the game work with controller, but like the start button or the main menu or the settings or whatever, nah, they don't need the controller, they can use the mouse. First of all, that's fucking lazy. Okay, I know, because I did it. I was like, they don't need to use it. No, they do though. There are some people that use a controller because they prefer it over the keyboard, but they can use the keyboard. There are some people that use a controller for very specific reasons. There are some people that use a controller because they have disabilities preventing them from using other input devices. There are some people that use a controller by default for everything. And if you're going to allow an input device, why would you not make all of the UI accessible by the input device. Now, this can be a lot of dev time, especially if you're way into your game and you built a lot of stuff to work with the mouse and keyboard or whatever. Controller settings are a lot different than like a mouse setting would be, especially if you build the mouse UI without controller in mind or something like that. That can take a lot of work to rework it, but I think it's really, really important. And you need to make sure that the input devices you allow to use can be used to interact with all of the elements in the UI, right? If someone can play half your game with a controller, there's no point. There's no point. And it blows my mind how often I see that. Simplifying controls is another one. So this is something I see a lot of new developers do. And like I said, I do the first Friday of every month on Twitch. I do what's called Feedback Friday, where I play viewers' games and I give feedback and the whole chat gives feedback, and it's awesome. And we have a lot of fun. But one of the things I see quite often is multiple buttons for generally the same action. So I see this a lot in roguelikes too, where they'll use the Q key. Sorry for blowing in the mic. They'll use the Q key to use a potion, but they'll use the E key to open a door, but they'll use a different key for to use a different item, when they could simplify all that, make the E key a use button, and set up the UI in a way where you highlight things and there's priority and there's things that make you use them, right? That when you take like 5 buttons and you can put them into one, it makes the game so much more accessible. Halo is a good example of this. Halo is just something that comes up on top of my head. You press X to reload. You hold X to enter vehicle. You can press X next to an upside down vehicle to flip the vehicle. Contextual controls are really important. They're especially important on a controller because you have much more limited button space, and so you can do a lot of things. But having buttons that double for things, but also having the UI accessibility to tell the player that, right? Like, yeah, I have probably more than thousands of hours in Halo, but that little prompt still comes up every time I'm next to a vehicle. Press X to flip, right? Hold X to enter vehicle. Every time, even 1,000 hours in, that prompt is still there because it lets me know. Maybe I haven't played it in a couple weeks. I forgot the controls. I pick back up. Lets me go. Maybe I hand the controller to my mom or whoever, and they have to play the game. That prompt is still there. It lets them know that they can use the thing, and it lets them know how the controls contextually change. And it lets them not use 10 different buttons for what is essentially the same action. And you can think about creative ways to group options together, but generally the less buttons you use, the better. And Phalophobia only had, I think there was 3 or 4 buttons in total, which I worked really, really hard to minimize the amount of controls. Control sensitivity is another thing. So this is another realization that I had. There were more than one person that played my game on stream that watching them just made me feel so bad. Like, literally, there are people with motor skill impairments and lack of, I guess, like, reflex, solid control in their hand. I don't really know how to say it, but they don't have the same usability of their hands as I do. And watching them try and play a game like Phalophobia that had a very quick response time made me feel really, really bad, man, because these people, they wanted to access my game. They bought it. They wanted to enjoy it. They wanted to experience it. And because I didn't include a sensitivity option or things like that, or an assist mode for that matter, no, the game says no. The game is a gatekeeper and just says no. You paid for it, oh well, you can't experience it. You can't. And that sucks, man. That sucks to, like, I can imagine if I were to buy a game and, like, I just couldn't get through it and I wanted to. That's the thing, is you want to. It's not even that you don't want to. It's that, like, the game doesn't want you to. It doesn't want to let you because it's just not going to allow you to play the way that you want to play. And I think that's a mistake. So control sensitivity is important. Now for the like audio stuff, separate audio controls for music, sound, and speech are really, really important too, because this is a whole nother level. Let me tell you. You think inputs and accessibility with physical abilities and keyboards and all that is varied across users? Let me tell you what's even more varied. Fucking sound, okay? These little speakers right here, I guarantee you are different than your speakers. Maybe you got my speakers, I don't know. These headphones are different than your headphones. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different speaker setups. Thousands upon thousands of different headphone users. Some shit is surround sound, some shit is not. Some shit is really harsh on high end, some shit has no low end, no bass. It is all over the place, okay? And it is literally impossible for you to mix the audio of your game to fit everybody. I promise you. No matter how well you think you've done in mixing, there's somebody somewhere that has fucking speakers with the tweeters that went out and they have no high end, and like it's gonna mix your music and your sound like absolute shit, like absolute garbage. And what's gonna happen is they're gonna try and play your game and their speech volume is the same volume as their music volume, and they're not gonna be able to hear shit. Their sound volume is getting muddied with the music volume. Their music volume is just way louder than everything else. So allowing people to mix their own sound, music, sound, and voice are the main things usually. If they can mix those three independently, that is really, really important. I did not do this for Phylophobia, and I think it was like a day or two after launch I regretted it, because it is something that makes the game unenjoyable, especially with voiceovers, where the voiceovers might be important, or things like that, especially with games that rely on their sound effects or things like that. You need to be able to let people play the way that they want to play, and part of that is customizing their sound experience. Maybe they want to listen to their favorite music while they play your game, right? Maybe they want to listen to a podcast. This is something that I did with Darkest Dungeon, by the way. Like, Darkest Dungeon is one of those games where you don't really, like, sound is fantastic, but you don't really need it, especially since it's turn-based and all that. And so there are plenty of times where I turn the sound on, but I turn the music off. So then I would turn the sound slightly down so I could listen to a podcast or some music or something like that and just chill out and like play the game and just, but at the same time, like kind of, I don't know, I was going to say use my mind, but like, you know, like occupy my mind, I guess, with a podcast or learn something or something. At the same time, like chill out. And I do that a lot now, actually. And games that don't let me customize the sound like that bother me. And sometimes I end up not playing them because of that. And I'm not the only example. There are, like, that's just my way of playing. But like I said, there's some people that have speakers that literally will fuck up your audio mix. So if you don't allow the mixing of that, it's really important. And the crazy thing is, because of the way that I play games now recently, like if I can chill out to a podcast and listen to somebody talk or listen to a GDC video or something like that, and play a game that I can turn off the music for and just turn the sound kind of way down, I play that game more often. So the developers are getting more gameplay hours of their game because they added a setting to the menu, right? That's important. The next one goes along the same veins, but if you have speech, you want to include subtitles. For that very reason, among others, if someone turns off the audio and the speech is really important to the game or the story or the objectives or anything like that, they don't hear anything. And so if it's audio only, you never want to have like just one medium in a game to tell some important information, by the way. So if it's just audio, no, it needs to be audio and text, or audio and visual, or audio, video, visual, and text. That way, no matter how they want to play your game, they can still experience the thing, or they can know what to do, or they can know what the objective is, or whatever. I really regret not putting subtitles in the game because Phylophobia, the cutscenes are these poems, and there's voiceovers and stuff, but some people play without the proper volume, and they miss all of that. They miss all of the poetry and the important things that are in the game because there's no subtitles. And not only that, but like generally the way that I watch TV too, and I don't know why this is, but I generally watch TV with subtitles on. And it's just something that I've always done. I don't know. I don't like really loud sounds, I think. I do have some sort of tinnitus in my ear, ringing and stuff. Maybe that's part of it. I don't like really loud sounds. So I tend to like under volume my shit and then put the subtitles on. And my own game won't allow me to do that. So it is what it is. And I feel bad for it. The speed of text prompts. Oh my God. This is a super common one. Okay. My girlfriend, Nicole, her read speed is different than my read speed. I read a ton. I have a ton of experience reading. I have hundreds of books over my lifetime. I read all kinds of stuff. I can read pretty quickly, right? Probably quicker than the average. Nicole does not. And there are a couple times where we're reading things and it's not a problem when, like, if we read a book together or something like that, which rarely happens, but like it's happened before. But there are a couple times where she's been on Feedback Friday, right? And I'll play a game and there'll be a text prompt that'll tell me a thing and it'll say, General, go, your next objective is to do this, but it'll be like, and then it'll be gone while people are reading it, right? For me, I read it a while ago and I'm bored with it and it just sits there. For her, she hasn't read the whole thing and it's doing its own fucking thing. It's just going to go on without us either way. It doesn't care. That's shitty. People need to be able to control the speed of their text prompts because especially if the information is critical, please allow them to hit okay. Now, the best way that a lot of games do this that I've seen is if you have like a text prompt, like somebody's talking to you or something, it'll be typing out, right? Because that's kind of a cool effect. If you click or you press a button, it'll fill in the whole text box. So it'll stop reading out. So you can, like, you know, if you read faster than the thing types out, you can read it all. But then the next time you click or you press the button, it'll go to the next text prompt. A lot of people I've seen that don't include that option at all. And there's a lot of people that I've seen that have it to where the first time you click, it skips the text prompt, that's generally not what you want. Like sometimes people want to click, but if they do, they're just going to spam the click button and it's going to fill and then skip and then fill and then skip. And that doesn't really matter because clicks are, you know, easy to do. That's really important. That is super important. As far as text goes, again, this is another thing. If you have important information displayed in text, you need to vary the medium. Consider also putting it in voiceover. Consider also putting some kind of UI prompt that lets you know what's going on. That's why that reading out text is so important, because if it just pops in text, it's, for some people, it's a lot harder to consume, right? It's a lot harder to just kind of take in. Whereas if it kind of reads out, it's generally, it starts with a little and it's easier to consume, and then you can just kind of keep going. You want reminders for controls or objectives. We already kind of talked about that with Halo. Reinforce important information with text and audio visuals. We just kind of went through that. And then this is another big one. This is one that a lot of games that are early on in development definitely don't have, and a lot of newer developers for their first couple of projects forget. You want to make interactive elements super fucking clear that they're interactive, okay? When you hover over a button, make it light up, make it bounce a little bit. When you click a button, make the game tell you that you clicked it. Okay. If you can't click a button and you click on it because it's disabled, make it flash red, okay? Like, let me know that the game registered my action, but also let me know that it's not an appropriate reaction, rather than just do nothing. And this is, I see this so often on Feedback Friday, where I'll click a button and the game will not pop the button up, it will not light the button up, it won't do anything. So I don't know that I clicked it, but it goes a step further. Some people don't even do any kind of highlight thing on the UI. So when I go to highlight a button, I don't even know it's a button because it doesn't highlight. It doesn't like light up. It doesn't move. It doesn't pop up. It doesn't do anything. So it looks like a UI element. And there's a couple times where I confused actual buttons with like resource counters or something because they were next to text, and I was just like, oh, well, I didn't even know I could click on that. And it's interesting because a lot of developers, their first response is like, oh, well, there's a button right there, you should have clicked the button, and they're like kind of defending their choice of UI. But UI is really fucking important like that, and you need to let people know that your interactive elements are interactable for more than one reason, right? Like, that's an accessibility thing for the general population, because if someone goes to play your game and they want to play your game, but they can't figure out how to play your game, they're probably going to stop playing your game. And that's really, 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 really important. So if they got to do something, they got to click on something, when they hover over that shit, make it highlight somehow, right? And there are a lot of ways you can do it. You can look all that up. And the last thing I want to leave you with, because this video is getting quite long, is figure out your objective for the game. Philophobia, I wanted to deliver an emotional experience. I wanted to help people with grief. I wanted to walk them through the 5 stages of grief, and seeing people that resonated with that message and then couldn't complete the game because I had some weird design philosophy that wanted them to get good when they're in the middle of going through their own trauma. It made me feel bad, man. I wish in hindsight that I had made the game a little bit more accessible to the general population, but then also given the opportunity for people to get better at the game, or people that wanted the challenge, the additional challenge, the get good challenge, to be able to purchase those levels, not microtransaction wise, but like, you know, find different collectibles and stuff. And that will be in the Steam version as well. So if you're interested in that, there are little gold heart collectibles in the game that you can find around the levels, and then if you get a certain amount, you can unlock this post-campaign realm that will be super fucking hard. And that's just for the people that want the extra challenge. And that'll be in the Steam version, director's cut type of version that's coming early next year. And if you bought Philophobia, by the way, you get a Steam key to that. You get that absolutely free. Not going to make you rebuy it. Everybody that bought it on itch is going to get a free copy of the Steam version. So, which, by the way, if you haven't bought it yet, you might want to do that. I'm sure there's a link down below. You can search Philophobia on itch and get it. But my name is Tim Roswick. I hope this was helpful to you. This has been a journey of me learning about accessibility, and like I said, this has barely even touched the tip of the iceberg as far as the accessibility options, but these are just some of the most basic ones, and the ones that generally don't require that much dev time but can massively improve how people take your game, and it can increase the amount of people that actually play your game. And if you're like me, that you make games because you want people to, you know, enjoy an experience you made, then why wouldn't you want to do a thing that could increase the amount of people that could enjoy the thing that you made? I think that's important. And I think it's really important to have the empathy to understand other humans so that we can build better experiences and improve their lives through joy, entertainment, fun, engagement, and all the beautiful, wonderful things that games allow us to deliver. So my name is Tim Roswick, and I will see you all in the next video. Hey, if you want more content like this, I highly recommend you check out the stuff on the rest of the channel. We have all kinds of stuff on game dev, motivation, self-improvement, all kinds of stuff. But if you make games or you want to make games, I highly recommend you join our Discord channel. We have game developers from all over the world, and you can, you know, do your game dev a little less lonely, or you can learn some new skills and meet some new people. So I'll see you there.